Coping sled, designed by Dennis from Hooked on Wood. It looks great, but is it any good? Stay tuned to find out what I think and whether I'd buy it again. Hey, I'm Fergus from Beyond Utility, and today I'm having a look at this coping sled, which is the Enjoywood Hooked on Wood Precision Coping Sled from Banggood. Full disclaimer, Banggood sent me this product for free. They did that back in June with the expectation that I would make a review about it. They're seeing this as soon as you are. They've not had any input on what I'm saying. I am quite picky about the products that I get, and I'm only really interested in getting products that I think that I would find useful. I had a big project coming up, making a kitchen, specifically some doors, where I thought that using a coping sled would be really useful. So I said yes to this product, and I've used it over the last few months making my kitchen, and this is my honest thoughts on it. First of all, the packaging on this product was good. You can see here the box took a bash, but everything inside is absolutely fine. Again, it's a shame that it arrives entirely in plastic foam rather than something recyclable or sustainable like cardboard. The clamps come in pieces on the top layer, and then the sled itself is underneath with the handles and miter bar attached. That's a nice touch, to have it almost completely built out of the box. What are the alternatives? Coping sleds come in a few different styles and approaches. Woodpeckers firstly. The Woodpeckers one is almost identical to the UJK version one. It costs £180 to £225, and it looks quite complex, but it's actually quite straightforward in what it offers. It's got a rail along one side, which you can see clamps pieces of wood up to 140mm wide against it. It does have a depth stop along that rail for shorter pieces, but that's about it. All the other bits and pieces on it are there just to hold the piece of wood in that one place. The Perspex window is there just to stop wood chips spraying up at you, and by default it has no option to mount the wood at an angle. It also must run along the miter bar, which does have a mechanism to ensure a snug fit, but any wobble in the miter bar will affect the accuracy of your cut. It also looks to me like a first iteration of a design. It doesn't seem very elegant or well thought out. Plus, it's pretty expensive. There's also a Rockler one, which is a simpler looking construction, simpler looking design, of which there are similar alternative models online. This is simply a flat plate with a toggle clamp and a horizontal bar to secure the wood against. A small Perspex window again seems to be a bit of a gimmick, but probably provides some chip protection and maybe helps with dust collection. At £70 to £150, these seem really expensive for what you get. It looks like a very simple product in my opinion. Now, the Hooked on Wood is a new entrant to the market with a unique design that has brought some interesting developments. Firstly, I think it looks a lot nicer. I think it's a nice looking product. It's cleaner and simpler in design, but also more versatile. To me, that's great design. It looks simple, but it does a lot. It also brings some unique features. Firstly, the wood references against pins rather than the fence, and those pins can be put in multiple locations to create different patterns and angles. Secondly, you can use the sled with the miter bar on the bottom, or you can use the Perspex window up against your router fence to ensure an accurate cut. The Perspex window must be perfectly parallel to the coping sled, and the Hooked on Wood version achieves that with precision engineering and precisely cut holes both on the Perspex window and on the pins that holds it. It fits snugly onto those pins. There's no wiggle room once it's mounted, and it's quite a thick piece of Perspex. The other key thing about the Perspex fence is it's at a fixed height off the table, and so depending on the layout of your router fence, it might or might not fit into one of the T-slots or one of the grooves in it. It is quite thick, it's about 8mm thick, something like that, but if you look on my router fence, which is the same one that Dennis has, it's very close to slipping inside the T-track, so it only actually makes contact with the fence at about a 2mm height. Now, I could obviously add something on the front of the fence, like a piece of wood or something that's attached there to resolve that issue, but it's just something to bear in mind. It's, however, not adjustable, so it only sits that distance apart and the pins are a defined height from the sled. If you watch the Woodpecker setup video, for example, they show you that you can set the adjustable Perspex window before making your cut. Now that's definitely versatile, but it leaves you dependent on that fence not moving at all during your cuts. And it's very difficult to set it up the same in multiple times. I can imagine it getting knocked slightly or going out of alignment. And in my opinion, it's a very useful feature that the Hooked on Wood or Enjoywood one has, where the fence is locked in position and it doesn't move, and you know that it's always parallel to the body of the sled. Thirdly, it features these lever arm clamps, which I've not seen on any of the other variants, and there's a number of places where they can be mounted on the sled to get a good hold on your workpiece. The flexibility of the mounting holes means that you're not limited to the 140mm width like on the Woodpecker's version, but it's worth noting that if you're using the Perspex window, you're limited to the workpieces up to 30mm in thickness. Utility, how well does it work? Now that's the key question. Overall, the coping sled works quite well, but there's a few key improvements that I would make to make it a lot better. Starting with the clamps. It's the number one job of a coping sled is to hold your piece of wood exactly where you want it and to hold it securely when you're making a cut. And unfortunately, I was not able to do that with this sled. One of the two clamps that it comes with does not grip the workpiece securely. You can see that as I tighten the lever arm, the clamp slides up the body, reducing pressure in the workpiece. I've spent a lot of time looking into this and I don't know why one works and the other one doesn't. I believe this design of clamp is a festool design with a slight difference in function. In the festool ones, the post fits into a dog hole and you push it down into the workpiece. This acts like a hold down clamp where pushing the clamp into the hole puts it at a slight angle and creates friction between the post and the hole. The harder you hit the clamp down, the more friction and the more hold force is created. Traditional hold-fast clamps work in this way as well. However, in this version, the friction mechanism has been moved into the lever head. You push the head down onto the workpiece and then lift the lever to apply additional pressure. This changes the physics of what's happening subtly but importantly. Firstly, you might not achieve as much pressure with the initial setting of the clamp. The festool video shows a worker hitting the clamp down into the table. It's not as easy to hit the clamp head down, you're more likely to slide it down. Secondly, the friction is achieved between a hard plastic clamp head and a smooth metal post. In the festool version, the friction is achieved between what looks like a rougher metal post and a wooden table. Achieving friction between the clamp head and the post is harder as neither surface is particularly rough. This slides very smoothly. And that's my assumption of what's going wrong with one of mine. There's simply not enough friction to keep the clamp head in place when the lever is raised and the clamping pressure is applied, and so the clamp fails. I've tried all sorts of things. I've tried adjusting the thumb screw in the back here, making it really tight, even tightening it with pliers. I've tried cleaning the metal with various degreasers in case there was oil or some kind of lubricant on it. I've tried swapping the heads between the two different posts. One always fails by sliding up after being locked down. After filming and editing this video, I had a brainwave and decided to try roughing up the surface of the metal post. I took some 400 grit sandpaper and sanded going around the post, which created enough roughness on the surface to provide friction for the clamp to grip. I was actually amazed that it was enough, as it's not easy to notice the difference on the metal post, but you can see here the clamp head slides much more easily in a smooth post before sanding versus a sanded post. I then tested this out on a piece of wood and both clamps held. This is such an easy fix that I'm kicking myself for not thinking of it sooner. I also think that in general, a top-down clamping force onto a relatively smooth aluminium surface is not ideal. When you're pushing a workpiece into a router cutter like this, the leverage is going to be applied, or the force is going to be applied this way. So the workpiece wants to do this. And when you're clamping down to stop it sliding sideways, I don't think that's as effective as clamping it in the direction that the workpiece is trying to go. So for example, on the Woodpecker's one, there's a horizontal clamp that slides up against the workpiece and then gets locked there. And in my opinion, that's a better method of clamping in general. I agree that these two clamps are a lot more versatile. I just think having another option would be even better. The variety of holes in the base means that you can look at different clamping options, and so I started investigating different clamping options. I bought a horizontal toggle clamp, but unfortunately the clamping force was applied slightly too high, and so it was lifting the workpiece up. The challenge is when you're clamping against this post here, this kind of short post, the clamping pressure has to be applied below the top of the post. Well, these posts are 15mm high, so the clamping pressure has to be applied in the 0 to 15mm space coming up off the top of that coping sled. So something like this would work because it applies a clamping force very low, But because it's designed to go through a dog hole, it doesn't sit flat, and I can't get that any lower on the sled base. So I looked into a bunch of options and I couldn't find anything that worked very well. I also thought that something as simple as a cam or wedges would work, and in the end I ended up using some custom-made wedges to lock the pieces in, and that definitely helped, but there was nothing to stop the wedges sliding out, and when I was using it, I just still did not feel comfortable that the wood was held securely, and that for me was a big problem when using this. Next up is the handles. So if the coping sled's first job is to hold the workpiece securely, the second job is for me to hold the coping sled securely. And for that, you need really good solid handles. And unfortunately, I found they let me down a little bit. The way the handles are designed is that the bottom half of the handle secures into a screw into a captive nut, and then the top half of the handle clips on. And unfortunately, the top just moves about a little bit or wobbles just a little bit too much, like it rotates there. And the fact that it was moving as I was holding it and pushing through just made me lose a little bit of confidence. I felt like it was a little bit disconcerting that the thing was kind of changing or moving a little bit as I was using it. I just didn't get a good feeling from that. Next, I want to talk about the base. I was a little bit surprised that the base is not a standardized thickness. It actually sits on these little plastic runners here, and neither the plastic runners nor the base are a normal thickness. Like I would have expected, for example, a 9mm bit of aluminium and a 1mm runner. The reason that's important is because when you have a workpiece in here, the height off the workbench is equal to the thickness of the base. And so if it was 10mm, you know that you need to set your router bit 10mm higher than normal. It just makes it a little bit harder. It means that you have to take this odd number into account every time you're setting up your router bit. So what's it like to use? Those issues aside, overall, using the coping sled was good. For example, cutting these joints, it was perfect. I set the cutter depth against the fence, and then I used the Perspex window hard up against the fence to ensure a clean 90-degree cut. I cut somewhere between 40 and 60 joints like this, and it felt like the right tool for the job.
Lastly, one feature I didn't use is the ability to extend the base with a sacrificial strip. I guess this would have been beneficial for me, but for some reason I didn't use it. I had a quick look at them though, and noticed that the thickness of the supplied 4mm MDF is slightly thicker than the recess in the base, which creates a slight lip. I would guess that the thickness of MDF will vary by manufacturer and moisture content, but I would also assume that a slightly deeper recess would be better than one that's slightly too shallow. If MDF tends to always be slightly oversized, I don't know if it is or not, but I know that the birch ply I usually work with tends to be slightly oversized, then a slightly deeper rebate would have been useful. I do love the fact that they state the dimensions between the holes on the jig though. That looks really useful.
In terms of value, the hooked on wood coping sled is selling on Banggood for around £70. That's probably going to change over time. And that's got free shipping to the UK. In my opinion, that's pretty good value. There are poorer designs out there for the same price or more expensive. However, since coming out a few months ago, you can now find the same design of sled at different places with different names for different prices. And it looks like exactly the same product. There's the Renew brand on AliExpress for £62, though with £44 delivery. The same design in black under the Rutlands brand is available on rutlands.com for £135. Compared to these two, the £70 on Banggood is still the best deal, but it does leave me wondering whose design is this actually and what the structure is here. I believe Dennis from Hooked on Wood brought it out with Enjoywood first, though whether that's the same company that's then producing it under the other brands or the other retailers, I don't know. Form and finish. Other than the plastic handles, this is a lovely piece of kit. It's the same premium aluminium experience that you get with this type of tool on Banggood. The quality is excellent, the machining is fantastic, and you can tell it's a high precision piece of equipment that's a joy to use. So these are my ratings. For value, I would give it 9 out of 10. I think at £70 you're getting a lot of tool for the money, which is great. For utility, I would give it 7 out of 10. I really wish the handles were more secure, the clamps were better, and there was a different kind of clamping mechanism, a horizontal clamping mechanism as well, I think would be great. For ease of use, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. I think it is easy to use, but again, the improvements around handle design and post height and things like that would make it even better. For form and finish, I would give it 10 out of 10. I think overall it's a lovely product, except for the handles. And my beyond utility rating is 8 out of 10. The key question though, would I buy it again? Yes, I definitely would. There's nothing else out there comparable for the price, and I think it's a good platform. Like with all of these holes in it, I can adapt it and I can add to it to make it better. I just wish there was a model out there that had those improvements, even if it was a little bit more expensive, that would be an all-round better product. Overall, I do really like this product. I would buy it again and I would recommend it. There'll be a link to Banggood in the description, and I hope you found this video useful. If I've missed anything or you've got any additional questions, drop them into the comments and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks for watching.